This next speaker truly lives and breathes AI and innovation. She spent over 25 years helping organizations harness the power of technology to drive smarter decisions and build the future. Valerie Bergman is a data and AI specialist at Microsoft with more than 2 decades of experience in development, project management, strategy, and technical sales. She holds a bachelor's degree in international political science and a master's in software engineering from the University of St. Thomas. Beyond her work at Microsoft, Val is passionate about inspiring the next generation of tech leaders through her volunteer work with Minnesota Tech, Starbase, and aspirations in computing. So let's give a warm Black Hills welcome to someone who's been leading the charge in innovation, mentorship, and AI. Please help me in welcoming Val Bergman.
Hello, Rapid City. I hope that you've had a really good morning so far, and I hope that your lunch was delicious, and thank you for focusing back in on spending a little bit of time with me for the next 45 minutes or so. So how many of you in the room are from Rapid City? Raise your hand. Okay, so we had some people traveling in. Yeah? So I am traveling in as well. I live in Minneapolis. I was born there. I'll probably always live there because my whole entire family lives there. So you might wonder, how is someone from Minneapolis at this event today? So I've been working with OmniTech off and on for the last 10 years. Started out working with them as a partner, and then we found a common interest in inspiring and building the next generation of leaders. So we got to work together in DigiGirls in Sioux Falls, and then they have transformed that into the Inspire event that they do now in Sioux Falls and in Rapid City. So when OmniTech reached out to me and asked if I'd like to come and speak with you today, I took a peek at the agenda, and I was really excited to come join you. I had the opportunity to meet the sponsors of this event last night, and I think it's really cool, the turnout that you guys have. I love the tracks that you have, and I hope that you've been enjoying your day, and hopefully I can join you again sometime. So I've worked at Microsoft for 12 years. I've been focusing on data and AI for the last 7, and this space, there's been a lot going on there. It's very exciting. About 2 years ago, I first heard the term GPT. If you have not heard the term GPT, raise your hand. Oh, there are some. Okay. So GPT has become almost part of our cultural vernacular. Most people that I've talked to, including like cattle ranchers and thoroughbred horse farmers, have heard of GPT. If you haven't, don't worry though, because I'm going to talk a little bit about it. So GPT is one model that is an extension of what had been built starting in the 50s in artificial intelligence. And the GPT model was an extension of a large language model. And if you don't know what large language model is, a large language model is an artificial intelligence implementation that's built on something called a neural network. So it mimics the way the human brain works. And a large language model is trained to understand language. So much as when you have a newborn baby and you raise them up to kindergarten years in school, you're teaching them all of the different words that we use in our culture and in our country, and that's what large language models get taught as well. Now, on top of large language models, there is the opportunity to educate the large language model. So in addition to understanding English or other languages, it's not limited to English, what if you could train that model, much like you send a kid to school, to understand things about how your business works? Then you have the opportunity to engage with this model and ask it questions and have it go out and find answers for you without a programmer having to feed in, if someone says this, send them here. So it's a different approach from linear programming. So it's not a new technology, but with GPT, it became a technology that was approachable for people to use at scale in their businesses. And this was all kind of a perfect storm of compute got cheaper, and compute got more powerful, and storage got really cheap. And so when you have a whole bunch of data, and you have computers with a lot of power, and you have the algorithms that have the neural network backend, you have this cool new opportunity that is generative AI. So have you all heard of generative AI? Yeah? Yay? Which, by the way, if you guys like interact and make noises, I'm okay with it, because then it makes me know that you're like alive and that you're hearing me, just so you know. But anyway, so we're kind of at this crossroads, and you may already be on one of these paths of, in your business, are you going to use this technology? Is it safe? Can you? Are you going to go down the road and try to start implementing things? Are you going to hang out and wait and see what happens? Because it's already been a couple years now, which goes really fast. And the older I get, the faster the years go. So there are a lot of people who have the opinion that don't touch this. Don't touch this technology. It's very scary. If you use it in a bad way, bad things will happen. If you don't know what you're doing and you don't have guardrails around, the world might blow up. What if these models cause us to lose our jobs? What if the models do repetitive tasks that maybe my sister was doing and now she's out of a job? It's scary. What if we don't understand the way that we're using the model and we do something accidentally that releases very sensitive information out into the public realm? That's happened, by the way. What if we're a lawyer and we quote something that came out of one of these models as a case reference that is a made-up case reference? That's bad. So maybe we shouldn't touch it. But then you have other people who are like, this is amazing. We should use this technology for every single thing. This technology can touch every part of our lives. It can change everything that we do, and it can make us a ton of money. It can open up doors that were closed before. So what are you doing with it? And what should you be doing with it? That's kind of the question. If you don't know where you are in your path, you're not alone. But I want to share with you today some things that you can do to start taking steps on your journey. And I want to share with you some things that other companies have done that you could look at, learn from, and use as you're implementing your own programmatic approach. And I am kind of curious, who in the room currently has in their company agents that are being used to help automate workflow that are being used every day? Raise your hand. Okay, so we have some. Cool. Who in your company is using generative AI to some extent across your organization? All right, a few more hands. Who in this room never ever wants generative AI to ever touch their business, ever, ever, ever? Raise your hand. By the way, I know some of you want to. And then, are there any people in this room who are using generative AI in their personal lives? Yeah. So you probably all should have raised your hand at that, because whether you know it or not, you all probably are touching generative AI in the phones that you have in your hand, or Spotify that you're listening to, or asking Siri about whatever, or Gemini, or whichever technology you're using. So 2 years ago, the term GPT was new to me. In this picture, that's the little candle there right now, because stuff has been happening. Stuff is going to continue to happen, and I don't really see it slowing down. So one of the challenges that you have is, if you haven't become familiar with what's out there now, what about the things that have changed in the last 2 years, and what about the things that are going to come in the next one? So I think it is important to keep an eye on the trends that are in the marketplace, so that you can think about how you might use them, how you might protect them, how you might manage them, and how you might attract employees who know how to use these tools, so that you can be the next innovators. So beyond GPT and the large language model generative AI approach, which, by the way, it's called generative AI because it means that the models can generate original content. So that was the first time that a model was able to generate its own creative original content. That's part of what scares people. It's not the same, though, as sentient AI, which means that it can act completely independently. That technology hasn't been developed yet. Some are concerned about it being on the horizon. Learn about that too. But anyways, since the GPT came out, there is another trend to keep an eye on, and it's called small language models. So small language models get trained on English just like large language models do, but then you have the ability to train a small language model on a very specific sliver of educated information, probably about your business or about a process in your business. And the small language model, since it's using this small amount of very specific information, can be retrained using a much lower compute amount, and it can be run on places like a mobile device or a disconnected device that you might have in a factory. So small language model is a trend to keep an eye on. Microsoft also, and after I did this slide, I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have updated this because this has already changed. But Microsoft had a tool called AutoGen out, and AutoGen is a tool to help with the wrapping around the large language models. So GPT and OpenAI, that's one set of models that you could potentially leverage in a solution. But there's also models that Google has produced in their Gemini suite. Anthropic is another set of models that you could potentially leverage. And the list goes on. There's like 1,500 different open source models in this space. So wouldn't it be cool if there was a tool that could help you figure out which model you should use for your use case? And if there was a tool that could help you in testing the model for accuracy and performance? And if there was a tool that could help you with model management, because once you deploy something, what happens when the next model comes out and you need to upgrade it? So that's the tooling with Microsoft AutoGen, which, by the way, has been replaced with Microsoft Agentic Framework, which, by the way, has just been today announced a private preview for integration with Azure AI Foundry. If you don't know any of these words, I'm not trying to give you the catalog of Microsoft words. My point in this is illustrating that the technology is moving really rapidly. You need to stay educated. There also, the initial big splashy announcement with OpenAI and GPT 3.5 was soon followed with GPT 3.5 Turbo. So it could do even more than 3.5, which was followed by GPT 4.0, which was followed by GPT 4, which was followed by 4.0. So GPT 4.0, the O stands for Omni. So large language models were trained on words, and the Omni models are now able to take as inputs words, but also images, audio files. The image could be a PDF that's OCR'd, or that it OCRs on your behalf, or the image could be a picture of a person riding a bicycle and you want to understand that there's a person riding a bicycle. That used to be called computer vision, being able to reason over an image. So GPT 4.0 is the marrying of large language model with computer vision. Point being, there's lots of cool things happening in the world, and there are a lot of opportunities for you to take advantage of it in your business if you understand what's possible. One thing that has been kind of a blocker for people, businesses, in implementing large language models across their organization and GPT models across their organization is siloed data. So if you have data all over the place, then you're kind of like every other company on the planet, and the model can be very smart if you feed it the right data, but if your data is all over the place, how are you going to connect it all together? So MCP is the Model Context Protocol. It's an open source agreement that the people who are generating models and people who are generating APIs are following in order to make the integration of data that you already have in your business and the model calls married up so that you can take that kindergartner, educate it with all of the business data that you have in your organization so that you can get the best results. It's really cool, and I anticipate that in the next 12 months, you're going to hear a lot about MCP, and if you are starting to pilot things inside of your organization, you'll do that too. Last one, agents. So agents are all the buzz. That's why I had the secret agent man thing coming up. Agents are all the buzz. They're everywhere. And I'm going to try to tell you a fast story to explain what agents are. In general, what an agent framework is what if you had models that did things really well that you wanted to call multiple models, and you might want to call things sequentially or in parallel? So what if you had an orchestrator that could call the right model for the right purpose and bring the results back together, stitch it in, and then on behalf of the user, if you decide, could also execute an action. So that is what the agent is. Now, if you might be thinking, I missed the train. I didn't get on. All these things sound like gobbledygook to me, and I don't feel like this applies to my industry anyways because I am in utilities or I am in financial services. We would never use this stuff. So I'm just going to hang out at the train station and let that thing zip on by. I want to tell you that it isn't too late for you and that there are things that you can do to start taking advantage of these patterns and technologies today. I'd like to present to you two different use cases that you could consider to peek into after you leave here today if you have interest. And one of them is called All In on AI. It's that little image up in the left-hand corner. Microsoft does a really nice job of publishing out case studies and learnings that we have as a company in our own implementations. And this All In on AI is a blog post that includes things like the governance framework that Microsoft is leveraging to ensure as we're rolling out these technologies, we're doing it within a security plane that is safe and that our customers, who include financial services, utilities, the Department of Justice, public sector, legal firms, that they all can operate with trust. And we publish components of that framework that you can borrow and use as you are considering how you might use these technologies in your organization. Because I think one of the first steps that you should do is think about governance. So you probably already talk about governance, but are you talking about AI governance? And if you're not, I think you should. The second one I have in there, breathe easy with Relativity Air. Relativity is a customer of mine. Oh my gosh, I totally thought that this timer was going the other way, by the way, so I'm going to tell you more stories now. Relativity is a customer of mine right now, and when I got introduced, you were told that I am a data and AI specialist from Microsoft, which was true when I put in my bio, but is not true anymore. Over our fiscal year change, Microsoft decided to reorg stuff. Do you guys ever reorg? Microsoft reorgs a lot. So they decided to reorg us. I was an Azure Data and AI specialist. What that meant was I had a named set of customers that I worked with, and it was my job to meet with people at my customers and understand what they're trying to do. What challenges do they have? What opportunities did they see for growth or more revenue or efficiency or whatever that measure is? And then I would help them map out a solution leveraging Microsoft Azure data services. I had a team of architects who would come along with me and keep me honest. I've been technical in my past, but I try not to dive too deep into the technical details now because I'm officially sales. But during our reorg, Microsoft took my role and they changed it. So instead of covering data and AI services in Azure, does anyone in here use Azure? Raise your hand if you use Azure so I know who I'm talking to. Okay, so some of you know. Instead of covering the data and AI services in Azure, they said, now I get to cover all of the Azure services. So, by the way, that means a lot. So I went from covering a lot of stuff to covering a lot of stuff. So I was like, well, this is super exciting. I come from a dev background, and I get to talk about my dev stuff that I love and the data stuff that I love, and I can bring in security and infrastructure people to talk about all that stuff that I don't love. And this will be a fun year. And since I was covering a broader amount of solutions, I went from 6 customers down to 1. And the 1 customer is Relativity. They're a cool company. They are a company who builds legal software, and their culture is very positive. They have almost no turnover, and they innovate fast. So they got to the tip of the spear with GPT. In fact, the first time I heard the term GPT was when their team of 5 data scientists that met with me asked me what I thought about it. And I was like, well, I don't even know what to think because I don't know what you're talking about. So they're a very educated customer, fun to work with. So anyways, I ended up 1 customer covering all of Azure. And I'm going to talk to, this is kind of tying back into agents, so if you stick with me a minute. So I decided, though, that there was an account executive position opened, which covers all of Azure plus Microsoft 365 plus Dynamics. So every reason that a customer would talk to Microsoft, the account executive is the first person. And I had spent about 4 years building a relationship with Relativity's executive team. I love them. And I wasn't really keen on a new person coming in and like harshen my mellow. So then I thought, well, why don't I take that role instead? So I'm now the strategic account executive of Relativity and working for Microsoft, but representing Relativity. And in that process, as you might imagine, I had to interview. So I like to know my audience. And so I decided ahead of my interview, I'd check into who was going to interview me. 3 of the 4 were people that I'd worked with a ton and I knew really well. And so for those 3, before our official interview, I called them up and said, are you going to hire me? If not, why? Why would you possibly say no to me? Tell me what you think I might have as like a gap in my learning. That was really helpful. But the person number 4, I didn't know at all. His name's Steve, and I didn't know anything about Steve. And I could call Steve up and introduce myself, but I mean, officially he was supposed to interview me in a day, so maybe that would seem like, I don't know, not professional. So I decided instead I would do my own research on Steve. So normally what I would do is I would open up LinkedIn and I would check out what Steve's background was. So I don't know if you guys use LinkedIn. It's a pretty good research tool. So anyways, instead of doing that though, I thought, why don't I use Microsoft Copilot? And so I kicked around, what would it look like if I used AI to help me with my research? Which, by the way, I do this all the time in my personal life too. I can talk to you about it later if you want. So I opened up Copilot and I was like, all right, Copilot, I want you to tell me about Steve. I want to know what his communication style is, and I'd also like to understand what his leadership style is, so that when I'm talking to him in an interview, I know what he's going to be excited about, and I know what he's not going to be excited about. So I ran that little thing. Pretty quickly, I got responses back. Behind the scenes, what Microsoft Copilot was doing is it was looking at the Microsoft Graph. The Microsoft Graph is a vector database that sits behind Outlook and Teams and Word and PowerPoint and SharePoint, and it amalgamates all of that information together into a graph database. So Copilot had a lot of information about how Steve communicates. I personally couldn't see any of Steve's emails because Copilot also, the Copilot AI agent that I was using, also relies on the security profiles of Entra ID, which used to be Active Directory. So it knows what I do and do not have access to, so I couldn't look at Steve's emails, but Copilot could help me understand what Steve's kind of brand was. So it returned answers to me. Have you guys, I don't know if you guys have ever heard the term hallucination, but hallucination is when you ask a model a question and it gives you an answer with like confidence. That's totally wrong. So I thought, well, I don't know if this information about Steve is correct because I don't know Steve. So I thought I'd do a little double checking. And I asked the model to give me back the leadership and communication style of my current manager, because I'd worked with him for 3 years. And it did a pretty decent job. So I'm like, all right, okay. My trust is increasing a little bit here. Then I asked it to give me the leadership and communication style of myself. And Copilot returned me back, like kind of here big themes of how you communicate. You may be surprised to learn that in general, I like to tell stories. So when I asked then, I'm like, okay, so now my next question is, knowing what I've just read about Steve and understanding myself, if I'm going into an interview situation with Steve, what things should I watch out for? Where might I trip on myself? Where might Steve get turned off by my approach? And where are there areas where Steve and I are kind of simpatico? What are things that I can highlight where Steve and I will see the same way? And I got some really interesting information back from that too. I took it into my interview with Steve, by the way, and I just told him right away, like, hey, Steve, it's nice to meet you. I've been researching you. Like, I did a whole bunch of analysis. Here's what I found out about you. And knowing what I know, I understand that you like outcome-based decisions and discussions. I know that you are very concise and you like things to be bam, bam, bam. I know that I am a storyteller, so I'm going to try to step myself back from that so that we use the 25 minutes we have together in my interview in the best way possible to get you to the outcome that you need in order to decide if you're going to hire me, which, by the way, I think the answer should be yes, you are. And if you're not going to, I'm going to ask you why not, but let's go. And Steve and I only talked for a few minutes before he said, you know, I have a little extra time. Why don't we hang out for the full hour? So it was really positive. Now, how I could have used that differently is there is a newer approach than just 4 months ago, and it's called Copilot Researcher, which is an agentic approach. So what I could have done is I could have gone in and I could have said right up front, Copilot Researcher. I don't have to call it by name, by the way, but I would have said, hello, I would like to prepare for an interview. I would like to figure out what Steve's leadership style and communication style are in comparison to what my leadership and communication styles are. I'd like you to put it in a table for me. So I want you to do a compare where you think that a compare and contrast of our styles. So I want you to put in a tabular format ideas about things that I should do to mitigate potential risk and to optimize potential overlap. And I would love for you to take that table and email it to me. That's what an agent can do. So anyways, Relativity took this technology and they build legal software, very highly regulated field, and their peers and the other customers that I worked with in the financial services vertical were largely on the train of thanks anyways. So Relativity decided instead of leaning away and taking a wait and see approach, they were going to dig in and learn about the risks. So what they did is they had a use case in mind of where they thought generative AI could assist. The use case was legal review. I don't know if any of you know much about legal review, but essentially if there's some kind of an investigation going on, Microsoft 365 will bubble up documents that they think that Microsoft 365 thinks would be pertinent to the investigation. And then a person reads through all those documents and decides, is this pertinent or not pertinent? The person who reads through the documents is a lawyer. I don't know if you guys know much about lawyers, but their pay scale, they're on the higher end of pay. So if you're going to pay someone to read through 1 million documents and that person gets $200 an hour, that's kind of a lot of money. Wouldn't it be fun if instead you could have an agent run through the document set for you, but have a lawyer who is overseeing the outcomes? Then the lawyer can look at the signals that are being called out, and the lawyer can focus on the highest value pieces of work instead of reading through the 900,000 of 1 million documents that are not evidence. So Relativity thought if they were going to do this, though, they would have to get past the fear in the market about generative AI. They would have to figure out how they could establish a trusted implementation. So what they did is they got together a set of their customers and really any lawyer who was willing to play along, and they did a big voice of customer discussion to learn about all of the fears and potential risks of leveraging a model to assist with this process. And then they built, and through their engineering, they engineered in protections. Part of the protections that they engineered in was, prompt engineering, by the way, is a huge field. So they leveraged a bunch of prompt engineering patterns in order to make sure that they were finding the right data. But then they also showed all of the work. So if the model was hallucinating or gave an incorrect answer, it would be appended with, here is the document that I pulled this information from and why I think it's relevant. So that a human lawyer in the mix could go through and validate all of the work. And they published what they did. And they published all of their benchmarks. And every time that they move to a new model, they go through this process again. This is where automated testing is really helpful, and you can use agents to help with that as well. Anyways, at the end of the process, they ended up finding that the human accuracy levels of human review were much lower than the AI model results for accuracy. A human being is still in the mix, a human being is still doing the review, but they're moving away from full manual review, and manual review for lawyers is boring and expensive. In fact, I was at their conference last week, and they had a customer, AT&T, who quoted that their internal legal department avoided $900,000 of lawyer hours, subcontracted hours, for a review that they had to go through, which I thought was amazing. Anyways, if you want to learn more about them, they have the case study. They've done a case study with Microsoft that's on our website and their website. And also on their website, they have links to their keynote, and they have links to their other AI implementations that they're rolling out across their portfolio. I think they're a really fun company to watch. And it's really interesting how they take governance, security, privacy is top priority for them, and they're operating globally. So we're talking about Germany, like rolling this out in Germany and other countries where they have data sovereignty rules. So if you think that you have hairy, meaty problems, they do too, and they've succeeded. There also is like, if you're like, okay, thanks for telling me about Microsoft that has like 5 bajillion employees, and it's our job to roll out new technology that maybe doesn't feel like it's a match for you. And maybe you're not a match for a legal company either, and maybe you don't want to start with a 10 million document review process, because really don't jump into the deep end if that's where you're starting. This is an example that someone published. It's on my LinkedIn, and I have a link for it at the end. I don't expect you to read it, but these are very simple use cases of where you can start dipping your toe in. So there are ways that you can dip your toe in the waters on using agentic AI inside of your business. And as you dip your toes in, think about governance, think about security, think about how you might need to clean up some security in the back-end data sources that you're accessing, because the security will get inherited. And keep an eye on all those balls as you're dipping your toe in. And by the way, one of the ones up here on the screen is meeting notes. Raise your hand if you use agentic AI for meeting notes. This should be everybody. Wow, there's like 2 people. Oh my gosh. I just want to weep. So having the AI meeting notes turned on is kind of like having an intern that follows you into all your meetings, which is amazing. I don't know about you guys, but I forget details like that. And we can have a great conversation, and I would write down the notes for the great conversation, and then I walk away, and I do forget a lot of the information. Then when I see you next, I don't remember what we talked about, and I have to dig around to find my notes. So that's how every meeting went for me. Have a meeting, take notes, put my notes somewhere that hopefully I have a good information architecture so I can find it again later, and then come back. Now here, like magic, I can turn on Facilitator in my Teams call, and it takes notes for me, and tracks the transcript, And it takes those notes and it puts it in a loop component that's tied directly to my Outlook calendar invite. So I don't have to find anything anymore because it's right attached to my calendar invite. So that's just one example of a very simple way that you could start playing with the technology now and hopefully getting some positive experiences and feedback. So take a look at that too for other ideas. Okay, so if you're like, all right, I want to, maybe I talked you into being interested in poking around a little bit. So if I did, and you're like, what do I do first? So we have my little diagram here that I meticulously drew on my own and plopped it in here because I don't like to spend time building PowerPoint decks. And across the bottom, we have time to implement. Vertically, we have AI expertise needed to implement. So the first thing that you can do is use the AI that you already own. Because you do, I'm sure that you own AI already. Use it in your personal lives, by the way. I flew in early yesterday, and my AI agent, for me, it's Copilot, but my AI agent gave me an itinerary from the time that I landed till the time I was due at dinner at 6 p.m. so that I could optimize my time here by seeing the most beautiful things that the Black Hills has to offer. It also gave me a little recommendation for a lunch spot in it, and it put it to the thing, emailed it off to me so that I didn't have to worry about losing connectivity and losing access to it. So use the AI that you have. If you use Microsoft 365, you have Copilot built in. It's part of Microsoft 365, the Enterprise Copilot. Use that. Encourage your employees to use that too, by the way, instead of going off and using GPT directly, because if they start prompting outside of your security boundaries, then that data becomes not yours anymore. So encourage people inside of your company to use the AI that you've purchased in your environment. Next step is extend the AI that you've purchased. I do have a very Microsoft-centric view, but I also understand that Microsoft is not the only technology company. So I have these words up here as illustrative, not as necessarily prescriptive. So in Microsoft's platforms, in addition to the copilots that you get inside of Office and Word and Copilot Enterprise, we also have a low-code ability for business people to extend those copilots. So maybe in addition to all the cool stuff that might be in the Microsoft Graph, you might have an ERP backend system that you'd like to tag in that data as well. Well, there's a connector that a non-technical person could hook up in order to get that information as part of the chat experience. So that is another pretty low risk, low investment way to extend the way that you're leveraging AI in your business. Next is you can create your own models. I should actually step back from how I just said that. You can leverage a library of open source models that other people have already created, and you can plug in your own data, and this would be more for like your developer community. So you probably have a bunch of software engineers who may or may not know anything about artificial intelligence. Well, they could start taking advantage of the artificial intelligence APIs, and they could build your own extensions on top of it for other workflows that have nothing to do with the different AI that you bought. Microsoft does have a platform for that called AI Foundry. There are other platforms that you can leverage as well, but there are very easy ways that you can upskill your developer community so that they know how to take advantage of the artificial intelligence advancements and put it to work for you in internal use cases for your employees or even for external use cases with your customers. And then lastly, you can take models and you can fine-tune them and extend them. So this is like if you have a data science team and you have something that you're trying to do that's really your bread and butter, it's your competitive advantage, it's your IP, this is where you'd want to do this one. But you don't start there. Lastly, as you're thinking about this journey, like any new tool rollout, technology rollout, the artificial intelligence journey is a line that's usually not straight. I always draw it jaggedy. Sometimes I draw scribbles and circles because you might end up doing that a little bit too and don't feel bad about it. That's part of the learning curve. But really evaluate for your organization, where are you on this curve, on this journey? If you're in the learn dot, Cool. Embrace it. Help your people to learn. Learn yourself. There's a lot of online curriculum that's free that you can go out and do hands-on labs in order to learn more about the technology and the tools. Do it. Have fun. Additionally, there's opportunities for people in your business sector to understand what are the concepts behind this that they might apply to the way that they're doing business, selling things. That's also cool. Maybe you want to encourage people to have a sandbox environment that they can work in. So if you have people in your company who are interested in these technologies and you're not really sure how you want them to be leveraged, if at all, still give them a sandbox to play with that's safe, that's governed, and that has some real data that they can access in order to learn. And then the last thing on this learn dot that I think people fail in frequently is, as a leader in your company or as someone who's enthusiastic about AI, you probably are going to get the nod about, sure, go ahead, spend your weekends and evenings learning all you want. But think about taking time that you carve out for your teams to really learn, where they're not being asked to do their 40-hour-a-week job. You're giving them the bandwidth to learn. Whether it's Microsoft does twice a year, a week-long hackathon week where everyone can take a week off from their normal job and just play. Maybe you don't have that kind of time and don't want to do it that way. Cool. Do something, though. Maybe do a day a month. However you do it, really give people real time to learn. Second thing is, after people learn and they kind of know what they can do, invite your teams to just brainstorm. And if you get people together in a room, it's really powerful, by the way. But brainstorm ways that you can leverage this technology in your organization. Take away all of the, oh, but we can't because of blah, 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 blah. Like, take all those dots away. Let's live in a utopia where anything is possible. And let's start thinking about what we think the highest value things might be and invite as many voices to the table as you can. And then pick out the ones that sound the most interesting. I would say that a couple of the first ones you pick should be the most interesting because they have some impact and they're easy, so that you can start seeing some wins and you can start learning. And then go to the bigger, hairier ones later that maybe have huger impact but also a lot of complexity that come along with it. As you're moving from ideate, go to do some business case development. So if you think something's going to add value, put a little bit of numbers around it. You don't have to spend like 1 million hours doing it. You don't have to deliver it to the CFO, but have it on the back of a napkin at least, where you've thought about what value you might get out of this and how you might measure it, so that you have something to point back to later to say whether you were successful or not, and so that you can convince someone to pay for whatever you're trying to do, because it's going to cost something, whether it's people's hours or compute power or whatever it is. Once you have those things in place, then start building. I put the letters MVP in here. We use it at Microsoft as minimally viable product. I don't know if that resonates with you guys or not, but call it a pilot or a proof of concept or whatever you want to call it. But build something, but don't just start building, because that is a problem I've seen, is companies will go into the building right away without thinking about the value that it's going to be delivering to who and why, and then those pilots just kind of hang out there and die. Whenever you build something, it doesn't get used. It's like, if we just build it, they'll come, kind of field of dreams thing. That doesn't work in technology, I don't think. And then when you get to production and full adoption, you're on the great swing up. But anyway, so start your journey. Please start your journey soon. Get educated. Get excited. Don't be intimidated. Phone a friend. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's have conversations about it. There's a lot of opportunity right now for our world to change in a really positive and good way. There's also risk. Manage it. And happy AIing, I guess. There's some links that I'll get out. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your day at the conference, and I look forward to connecting with you guys in the future.